One of my favorite questions in the whole world is, who are you really? Like, really? My mom asked me that question from the time I was a child. And if you were to pick up this amazing new book, The Power of Naming, A Journey Towards Your Soul's Indigenous Nature by Melanie Dewberry, you would find that one of the first questions she asks is, who are you really?
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 Yeah.
And we mean it. This is Shiloh Sophia here for Power Creatives TV, and season 2 is called Herstory. And I'm gathering together with women in my community, mostly friends and colleagues who have brought form, who have brought books and teachings and ideas and methodologies and managed to cross the veil from the unmanifest into matter. And so today, my guest has this amazing book that I've been enjoying is here. So welcome, Melanie.
Thank you, sweetie. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so glad to have you. And we're so glad to have all of you here too. We love for these to be experiences of our conversation that you can see women who are powerfully creating in their lives, and then to offer that out to you, hopefully to inspire you to go out and continue to bring form into the world. Things that are based on who you really are.
Right.
So if I ask you that question.
Oh no, she's turning the tables on me.
It's the central question, the question you might have been asking yourself all these years. And who are you without the titles? So as you've been exploring this and studying this, I really think of this as a big teaching medicine. So when you ask yourself the question, who are you really? After you've done all this work and gotten so close to it, what arises for you?
Wow, she didn't tell me she was going to do that. Or else I would have prepped. But I would say at the base, I am a child of God, Goddess, all that is.
Amen.
I am love, and I am fire. I am earth and a disruptor. I am fun until I'm not. And mostly, like I said, I'm love. And, and I hope that as I say that into the world, that I bring a different connotation to how love can look. I mean, I am kind, but I'm not nice. I am forgiving, but I have very clear boundaries. I am sarcastic. I tease my husband all the time. So love doesn't always look like flowers in my hair, although I love flowers in my hair. Dancing through the grass. It's whatever form it needs to take. And sometimes it's the fire,
Right. Sometimes it's the fierce love. We need many more words.
Yes.
Love is like one of those words that means like, I love ice cream. I love the universe, right? It's the expanded version of that.
Right.
Absolutely. So, child of God, yes, and Goddess, yes. I love that. Why don't you all ponder for a moment and just, it's so impossible to answer, which is why we keep asking it. If it was easy to answer, we would stop asking it. And I don't think that it's ultimately about the answer. I think it's ultimately about what happens to you when you ask yourself the unanswerable question.
That's right. And it's a question that, at least for myself, that I ask myself all the time. Like, it's never done.
Right.
Because we're always evolving and my identity is shifting. And it's a question I'm asking myself now. Now, who are you? Now that you've written the book, who are you? I'm like, oh my God.
Keeps changing.
Yeah.
Right? And I think a big part of your teachings has to do with moving away from what you call the data way of defining who we are.
Yes.
Like if people say, well, who are you or what do you do? You're like, I'm a coach, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, I'm a healer. But as you teach, there's other ways for us to get more into who people really are.
Yeah. We are really defined by our roles as the measure of our value and our identity. And while I think that the roles have value, I think that it's not our first measure of who we are. And I mean not to take anything away from mothers or fathers or engineers, but that we can get our sense of pride from that,
Right.
and our sense of worthiness from that. And the truth is, we are worthy, and so the question needs to have a deeper resonance than just where the data hits us. Because what happens when the roles change, when the kids leave, when you're fired, or when you retire? Then who are you banking on? Who are you connected to?
Right. So it's like there's skills, right? Engineering, doctoring, cooking, those
Yeah.
are skills, which we've often translated into an identity.
Right.
And then there's archetypes, familial and friendship.
Yes.
And that also is not the identity.
Yes.
But those are layers that we have placed with our identity, which has effectively done this really weird job on our soul,
Right.
which is to isolate us from who we really are, or even being in the inquiry of who we really are.
Right.
And so you've worked with thousands and thousands of clients in your role as a coach, although I understand you have transcended that title, so I'm not going to call you that anymore.
It's quite all right. I'm not offended by that. It's fine.
No, but I mean,
it's changed a
you've
little bit.
moved not beyond, but you're focusing on some other things now.
Yes.
So, but I know that you worked with so many people in that. And was this something that you discovered in working with your clients, like that they were really hung up on this negotiating for their worth piece?
It was what I found. Well, first of all, my business at the time was called Soul Purpose Coaching. So people came to me because they were looking for that piece of themselves, and they, we're set up in a way to negotiate ourselves right out of the canal in this structure, this kind of like dollar for energy exchange that we've got going on. And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with the dollar, nothing wrong with the exchange, except for how it's set up. So yeah, a lot of the clients I work with were absolutely lost in the dynamic of the exchange, which creates a system of compromise and negotiation of who they really are, and actually blankets
Right.
the identity of who they really are, and tells them, as I'm sure as an artist and all the people that you've worked with, that you know this, that part of your work, I would imagine, with people creating their own art, is to actually see themselves and to let it have air and breath, to let it have exposure, and to understand that whatever safety that you're waiting for, it's not going to be in a policy, a law, or necessarily even in another group. Or if it is in another group, it'll only be limited to that.
Right.
That safety is only brought by ourselves coming full out. So yeah, it was a lot of my clients, which is, and I imagine it's a lot in people in general. Because I think at some point we all get interrupted
Right.
in our childhood and get told, let's put that little
Right.
piece away.
Yeah, like who you're going to grow up and be, the answers to that were professions. So we were taught that from the time we were really little, and what a constraint. And I think that one of the difficult parts is that we don't even know that that's what's happening.
Right.
And so it's even worse because it's insidious, subconscious, and hidden. And how do you get at sort of this identity and
Right.
move to what does that identity really want to do or be or become, which has nothing often to do with skill.
Right.
Because we've also mixed up skill with identity. Like you have to
is
be good at
good.
something.
Wow, I like that a lot. Keep going.
Yeah, well, because that's in my role as an art teacher.
Yeah.
Part of what I do is I invite people to be creative without being talented, and I make a distinction. Creativity or artistry for someone who's skilled is a particular thing. A musician who can play an orchestra, an artist who can paint, a realistic painting. That's talent based. And then what we've done is we have measured our creativity, our skill, against those who are truly skilled, and then determined we're not talented, therefore should not pursue this.
Right.
Meanwhile, we are all creative. And so that's part of the work, is to rescue creativity from the talented and bring it to all the rest of the people.
I got to come back for another workshop. She tried really hard to rescue me. I was at her. I'm like, nope, I'm not painting. So now I have to come
Now
back.
you get it.
Now
Yeah.
I have to come back. If you'll have me back,
Yes.
now I'll come back. It's so funny. You're right. And I
Yeah.
think there was that seed of I can't paint, so that's not my bailiwick.
Right, because I'm not good at it.
Yeah.
So we go around trying to control our relationships with the universe and each other based on what kind of good we are at a skill instead of who we are.
Right.
What? I mean, I feel like that's what this whole...
That is beautiful the way you said that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like what I've been watching her on her TED Talks and reading through this book and just getting ready for our meeting, although our paths have woven together for many years. We've just been crisscrossing back and forth and finally decided to have this conversation. And what I love how the distinctions that you make and helping people recover from the way that we've allowed ourselves to be named or that we've named ourselves. It's I think of it archetypes sometimes as shelters.
Yes.
And they are protective. And at a certain point, you got to rip the mask off and see who's under there.
Right.
Only we haven't been being that, so we don't know.
Right. Yeah. No, you do have to come full out.
So tell us about this. What is, my mom saw the title of the book and she was like, that's it. That's it. The power of naming. Like that is power. And you love language. My mom is a total language. I'm crazy about language and consciousness like yourself. So when you brought this concept out and emphasized it from the Indigenous nature part, tell us your vision for the power of naming.
The book, the work?
Yeah.
I really wanted people to know who they were, to just declutter all of life's smatterings that weren't a part of their original art form, but that were foisted on them. I wanted them to know in no uncertain terms that they have value, that they are loved, that they are meant to be here, and that they have a name that will root them. I feel like so much of what happens, we're such a transitory people, myself included, we're moving from job to job or from person to person or from identity to identity. I wanted them to have roots into something really indigenous of their own nature.
I love that. And so when you talk about the indigenous nature, I think this is a really important thing, especially right now as thankfully many cultures throughout the world are reclaiming that in a way that has been really diminished, enforced diminishment,
right,
to separate from your people.
Yes.
That has been huge, especially however you ended up in America, here in particular.
Yeah.
Your name got changed, whether you were wherever you were from. You took on the name that was normalist to your name, or you took the name of the people who brought you here, or whatever it is. We went through a de-naming when we got here on all the different levels that we got here from. Like when I say my Russian last name, other Russians are like, that's not a Russian last name.
Wow.
Like, okay, So it's like we especially here, I mean, it's supercharged everywhere, but the melting pot places definitely have a sense of that, losing of that. So that returning to your soul's indigenous nature, I mean, tell me what, that says a lot to me in language. What does that say to you?
Well, so I'm only a little bit Native American. I've been walking in this way for a very long time. And, sometimes when I go to the res, people are really welcoming, and sometimes not so much because I don't look like them. And we all have, at some level, some internalized oppression. And what I wanted to say to people in this book was, we all are indigenous. We're all indigenous to something somewhere. You may not be Native American or Irish, or maybe you are, I don't know, maybe you know what your roots are, but you belong.
Yeah.
And so for you to know within yourself, where is it that you feel held? Where is it you feel most like you? Where is it you feel most loved, most seen, most visible? That energy, that place, that experience, that is your indigenous nature. That is where you're rooted. That is where you will flow. That is where you will grow. And I wanted people to know, because we all come from such different places, that we belong to something unique within ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That belonging, which you also do some wonderful teachings on, and that's one of ours too, regarding the red thread. And one of the teachings of the red thread that we've really brought out is to include yourself. Like the first part of a connection is to say, I'm already connected. And that alone is such a huge resonating shift because we're all, I mean, even those of us who had a sense of belonging inside of our family, which is not that many people for a lot of people,
Right.
or the place where we grew up, or we had a group of friends or whatever, we all, going through the belong and don't belong thing is a human initiation all people will go through. Some will go through it a lot worse than
Yes.
others due to a lot of class issues, race issues, appropriateness to context. I went to a million different schools. I was always on the outside, and I had to struggle with including myself. And it was torture, actually,
Yeah.
high school. And yeah, like that was really terrible. And so
Wow.
I had to choose to belong to myself first,
That's beautiful.
which I did. And then I started inviting other people. That was in high school. So that was like one of
Wow.
my first big things. Like, if everybody's isolated, everyone is isolated, then all of us don't know that the other person is. And now we all just need to get over it and get together. But you have to choose to include yourself.
You were way ahead of the curve. You were way ahead of the curve.
It came from suffering.
Yeah, but
You know, just like I love the story you told about being a young woman and not being subject to racism where you grew up and moving somewhere else,
Yes.
and then suddenly realizing that it was
Yeah.
coming towards you, and then making a decision that probably the people who were treating you like that were clueless, and you just needed to educate them and just show them who you are.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Wow.
So let's do a red thread. I want to extend this red thread over to you, my dear,
Thank you.
and just include you in this
Thank you.
amazing circle that we get to be together. Such a sweet privilege. And to myself, and the other teaching about the red thread is that there's a sense, if you choose to participate in it, that you're already connected to a lot of the people that you're supposed to be connected to. That is part of your soul tribe. And that's something that Melanie teaches a lot, is like when you remember who you are or become who you are, then your people can find you.
Right.
Right?
Right. Exactly.
And so this not being who we are actually prevents us from being with our peeps, right?
Being with our people.
And so we extend this to you, where you are, with a permission slip. So I invite you to imagine this red thread is traveling through space, arriving where you are, and that you are in this circle with us. And just imagine that we're asking you the question, who are you really? And will you choose to include yourself?
Beautiful.
Sending you love out there. And each of us has our piece of the red thread. So we're in the circle together. And at the same time, we each hold our own piece, that unique piece that you're talking about. And so many of us lose that. So I'm going to
Thank you.
give you some.
I
I'll
love the
take
ritual.
some. And may you be in this circle in the quantum way. I will
Thank
tie it
you.
for you. Did you already do a loop yet? And imagine that we're tying yours on for you. Whenever you come to the alchemical cafes, I'm going to put it on this side, building up a sweater over here. Bring a cup of tea or juice and bring your red thread, a candle, a bowl of flowers. That's how we do it around here. Is it long enough to do that?
Mm-hmm.
And so this symbolizes each having our piece. And do you feel like, thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you
Thank
feel like when people contact that Indigenous nature within themselves, how is that connected with the naming of themselves or the unnaming? First the unnaming, right?
First the unnaming, right? You know, and when you uncover your Indigenous nature, when you decide, when you find, when you claim, like where is most resonant for you, what feeds you, then you declutter the body, the soul, and you get to the soul, and you're listening to the beautiful poem that's been etched in you. You've had inklings of it. They've had inklings of it, right? You've heard it, but it's so clear that it's hard to dismiss it now, because you've defined yourself as belonging, and you do belong. We belong to one another. I really believe that.
Yes.
You've accepted that as a truth. And then the voice starts to come forward. The story starts to unfurl. The song starts to be heard. And you start speaking into your indigenous nature. You start walking into it. And of course, we've all been on these roads before, whereas you walk into something, walking what looks like a forest, but the path just starts to clear itself. And then what's yours starts to come towards you. Starts to be found easily. You're not working as hard. You're not having to negotiate. You're not managing yourself. You're not looking to be appropriate. Let me just tell you, that's one of the words I just like to freaking scratch out of the dictionary. It's one of my least favorite word, appropriate, because it usually is a way of punishing people. You're not appropriate. That's inappropriate, that kind of thing. Anyway, so you're not worried about being appropriate. You're actually just looking at how to be you. How to be you, how to then again be you, how to then be you regardless of the circumstances. And I think that's a challenge for most of us.
Oh my gosh, yes. So even with doing all this work, do you still find you have to just keep claiming, I'm going to show up and be me?
Yeah. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Because, one of the things I realized in writing this book, don't write a book unless you want to know yourself better. I don't care if it's a cookbook or an artist, but you've written lots of books, right? So the more you do your work in the world, the more you have to uncover yourself. And I realized how heavily influenced I am by other people.
Oh my gosh, yes, right?
And I don't think I really understood the level, everything from what I'll eat to what I'll wear to where I'll go to school.
All the voices.
It was kind of amazing. I'm like, oh, I'm being influenced again. And having people's thoughts, it's not a bad thing, but it's like you have to know your own first, your own pool, before you start adding other people's water into it, because you can start to drown in that in their thoughts. So, everybody always has another idea about what you should do, be, or think. So if you don't have your own kind of set standard, then you'll drown in other people's thoughts. And I realized I am heavily influenced by other people's thoughts, feelings, and how I should behave. I'm like, what am I doing?
Right.
What am I doing to myself? Well, I'm killing myself.
Yeah, and just think of the culture that we have of like you said, even down to like what you should eat and, when you should eat and what you should be doing and what you should be wearing and what's good for you and what's bad for you. I mean, like, it's like we're a walking, I must Google some health concept or some vocabulary word like all day long. I'm like, well, what does that mean? Oh, well, what about that? And what is that symbol? And and I'm constantly looking for evidence and, right path and all of that. And it's when we do that, a lot of times we untune from what could be there. But the challenge is that we have a hard time being quiet and we listen without the opinions. And for a lot of space, there's nothing there, which really scares people.
Yeah, initially, that's absolutely true. I think one of the things that has really come forward as from this body of work, and maybe also from age, is just slowing down. I know we've heard it 1,000 times, and so I know that somebody probably told me this when I was younger, and I guess it's hard to learn until you're ready to learn, but the power of slowing down. Even if you don't meditate, that's okay. I love meditation, but meditation isn't for everything. And by the way, everyone, the way I meditate is probably not the right way, whatever the right way it is. But if you can slow down enough to just take in the world you're in, to take in yourself, I can't even explain to you what slowing down will bring up for you, what it will allow. And yes, you're right. There'll be times where there's nothingness, but that's okay. We don't have to fill it up with anything.
Right.
And we're so uncomfortable with the pause.
Like Alice Walker says, the wisdom is in the pause.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is in the stopping and just slowing down so you can take yourself and this glorious world in. Mm-hmm. We're so glorified by the busy, as though being productive is a measure of our worth again. And I don't know if that comes from farming, where if you didn't produce, the word produce, production, if you didn't produce, you didn't eat.
I think that's part of it. What
do you think it is then?
I definitely think that's part of it. And I feel like, I don't know, it's a hard one on one hand because I was taught in a family to work extremely hard, and I do work extremely hard, but I'm not a victim of it.
Right.
Where I find a lot of people who are trying to work a lot less hard and then making themselves wrong that there's a struggle at all. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but actually all of our ancestors dug in hard ground.
Yeah.
And so I feel like hard work has gotten a bad rap. I think that there's also a place where we can try to push the river. Not
Yes.
that kind of hard work, but
Right.
so the kind of hard work that goes against the wisdom of Earth, that's a different kind of hard work where there's actual, blocks that are there
Right.
to move through. But it's, there's something about just the laboring being so good, and I feel like we miss that. These scissors that I cut the thread with were my grandmother's scissors, and my mom, my grandma were entrepreneurs, and they worked as late until they fell asleep, and there was nothing wrong with that. Only I didn't get as much playtime or whatever, but it's an interesting thing when you kind of reevaluate.
I want to hear more about that. I love that. I haven't heard this conversation before. The distinction between, first of all, I love the quote you just said. Our ancestors labored in, what did you say? In
Labored in hard ground, broke hard ground.
That's beautiful.
I think about that image a lot, like my grandfathers and the shovels and my grandmothers my grandma was a plumber and a horseshoer and a seamstress and a house builder. She could do anything. That was her thing. She could do anything.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to hear more about it because the hard work that goes out in most of North America anyway is go to the job,
right? That kind of
leave your soul, work 80 hours, have nothing left for anybody else.
That
job
exhaust yourself model.
Yes, yeah, and you're talking about something else,
and something else that they did a lot slower than we try to do it now. When I think of the people who taught me to work, it wasn't about speed.
Right.
There was definitely production. Like my teacher Sue. Who's part Blackfoot Indian, she was like, what you do is called drive-by painting. You need to slow down,
Oh, wow.
She did everything methodical and slow and steady. We used to carry these giant logs up from the beach that she wanted to carve on, and I would be like, we can only walk 2 steps with this. It's so heavy. She's like, then you just rest. I'm like, we're going to be here all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's that hard work, but also with mindfulness is the distinction.
Yes. That is really well said. Very well put. I love the idea of the ancestors. Well, we'll just rest all day, and that's the way it is, with my people too. And that was my first, thought was like, it gonna be a while here. Cause I'm so used to just being efficient.
Yes.
And rushing through and getting it done. And it's like, no.
Right. So we've somehow equated like the speed piece.
Right.
That production that you're talking about,
Yes.
like this output, this measurable output,
Yes.
which goes back to your teaching on, talk to us about that and the negotiating yourself for, what is it? How does that work?
The negotiating yourself for that which you want.
Okay. Everyone just pause and get that.
Okay.
The negotiating of yourself
for that which you want.
that which you want.
Yeah. So that is all the different ways we've been taught to bargain, to negotiate who we are for being liked, for being loved, as though we could negotiate ourselves for love, right?
As if it was even possible.
Right. For money, for inclusion, for belonging. It's not really belonging, but it's usually along that line, like we want something, and mostly it's connection, approval, love, to belong. But the myriad of ways we can negotiate that. We lose weight. We dye our hair, and nothing wrong with dyeing your hair or losing weight. I'm just saying you'll want to notice
the things that we do.
If you're doing it so that, well, if I lose weight, then I'll be good looking, and all these different things. Not being the fire so that you don't frighten people. That was my thing. Like, don't be the angry Black person.
Whatever you do.
Right. Don't bring the fire.
Don't fulfill that stereotype.
Nuh-uh, girl.
Which is what we actually need right now.
Right. Don't be the one who brings the fire. Don't call stuff as it is.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, whatever is uniquely you, the world is somehow asking you, or we believe the world is asking us,
Right.
to negotiate that in order to belong.
Right. Like, are we really being asked that?
Right. Right. That's
Because
the
we make up a lot of stories around what we're being asked to do. You made me think of Margaret Cho, the comedian, Asian comedian from San Francisco, and she talked just this whole routine about like having a show about her, and they asked her to lose weight to be her, even though she got the show because she was who she was. Now she's super skin, but it's like, I love that sort of,
God.
that's such a classic example of like, in order to be you got to be more beautiful and skinny. And,
great.
I wish I could talk to her because she did, from what she started to what she ended up, was like such a different look and a different, she's very glamorous now.
Oh, really?
And it's just like, I love when there can be women who come out and who can not move toward the glamour as the thing, or even just the way that we as a culture, I didn't do this, but the whole calling Hillary the nasty woman thing, and then how we pick that up. We're like, well, we're going to be that, that reclaiming of the shaming.
Yes.
Which is a huge part of what we deal with as cultures of shaming, which it's so prevalent. It's everywhere. And a lot of...
Yes, it is everywhere.
And we do it to ourselves. And there's a lot of the visible, and then there's the internalized oppression that we're not even aware of.
A lot of internalized oppression. Wow, I didn't realize that about her, that they asked her to lose weight.
I know, right?
And it's,
to
that
become yourself,
so crazy, right?
Right. And what are you doing like that? Like, I'm asking myself right now, I'm sort of like doing this deep dive of like, what do I do that's like that? Like, what have I been doing about like, if you're going to be successful, then it has to look this particular way.
Yeah.
Whether that's your clothes or your car or I said to Jonathan the other day, I'm on film all the time and I'm like, I can only wear the same dress like 4 times or people are going to think I don't have enough resources to buy new clothes. And it's a story, but it's also happening.
Yes,
right. So it's one of those things where there is an enforced thing on you. You are, because they don't actually really care, but they are thinking, wow,
I've seen that before.
I've seen that.
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
So it's one of those interesting things where there's some amount that's real, there's some amount that's pretend, and then we put it all together and stir it up and try to make a self out of it.
But isn't it crazy though that we live in a culture that could be my thought watching you?
Right. That even comes up.
Like, that just would never come up in the indigenous nature of ourselves. We never tell a tree, I've seen you. I've seen that leaf. I've seen that leaf. Yeah, I've seen that leaf. I've seen that branch. Do something else.
Right. Isn't that bark getting a little wrinkly over there?
Right. It's like, why don't you grow a new limb or something? It's a crazy kind of world we've created where,
It is.
I remember one of my friends, I was wearing, I only have a few earrings and I just kind of wear them over and over again.
I have my same exact earrings.
Do
Mine
you?
have pearls. Yeah.
And my friend goes, I love it when you wear those earrings. Like, you wear them too much. And I was like, wow, what a crazy world we live in, But I just took it to as a year ago, I would have taken that as, I better change up my earrings.
Right.
And now I just like, they're my favorite earrings. I just wear them.
Right.
So
it's like a stepping in too. And one of the things I've heard you teach about also is the sense of, by the time you get there to the unnaming and then the renaming by choice or by your community, you actually don't care anymore what anyone thinks.
Yeah.
For the most part.
For the most part. I mean, I think there'll always be that little, on the shoulder. But I think, and I think as you evolve and as you mature through the process, because that's what evolution is, it's a maturation, it's not a whimsy of like, I don't care what other people think.
No.
It's more of, you're so grounded, you're so rooted, that you're so in your way, not blissed out, but so connected that this is your song. You're not adding any different notes. And so you're learning to cut out the noise and listen to the one voice, really listen to the one voice. And I wish that I had been able to do that, 20 years ago. I don't want people to have to wait until they're 50, 60, 70 to go, you know what? I don't care anymore. I want people to get that at 20.
I think
10.
they can now. I don't know if it was available when we were younger in the same way. just like, available. It's there, but
I know
just
what you
like
mean.
from a evolution or devolution standpoint, in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
there are some parts of information that seem to rise and ebb at different
Yeah.
times. And when I talked to my mom about, well, why didn't you tell me this or tell me that? She's like, well, actually, honey, that conversation wasn't being had then. And she reminds me regularly of, because I'm like, what about this philosophy? Or like when I discovered that painting was not about an externalized image, but an internalized image, that I've taught that to people, and it's been life-changing for them in 5 minutes, right?
Wow.
And I just talked to Louisa Tish, another guest on Power Creatives TV yesterday, and she was talking about the day I walked into her house and was like, don't look outside, look inside. That was everything. And I said to my mom and to my teacher, I'm like, why didn't you tell me that the images were within?
Yeah.
And they were like, we didn't have a language for that. And yet I can look at both of their artwork.
Wow.
And they were doing it, but they couldn't tell me, and I couldn't discover it from looking at it.
Right.
There's the love of language.
Yeah.
Right? To name it. You got to name it.
Right. It had to evolve, I guess, or as you say, de-evolve for it to come. Isn't that amazing?
And to struggle for the conceptual language that allows us to get access to a concept people aren't talking about yet in the way that we need to talk about it.
Right. And I want to add something.
Yeah.
I would love that, because one of the things, like you said, we're both passionate about is the languaging piece.
Yeah.
And one of the things I work with people on is like, you have to let go of the dead language, which is what I call corporate speak. And I get that it's appropriate in the job perhaps, but it will never actually represent who you are, your art. I think everybody's an artist like you do. It will never represent your soul. That's not the language. You have to have more indigenous language. And what is an indigenous language? It's an alive language, a language that speaks on your behalf. It's just whatever that is. There isn't a way for me to tell you how to speak. I offer certain words in the book to use, but really it's the language that represents you. And that is your indigenous language. That's the language you need to use to speak about those things that have not yet been talked about as you're talking about it.
I love that. And so can you give us some examples of the corporate speak or the dead language?
Oh, things like, appropriate. When I hear people like doing their resumes, dynamic. I don't even know the corporate speak because I'm so out of it now. But I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It feels dehumanizing to me. I don't even know what the corporate speak is because I'm so out of it,
I was just communicating with a mutual friend of ours, Christina Rilo, and I was texting her and I was like, I have made a decision from the hot tub this morning, which is that I will no longer launch, or quotes, whatever that is, those.
Yeah.
Around solstices and equinoxes. It's become like a buzz thing to do, where my family gathered around solstices and equinoxes. That's a big time to do things and a big time to open things. But it's like so popular now that everybody's all the women are launching on solstices and equinoxes. So I made a decision today. I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm just going to get off that, not only so I can reclaim the holidays, but because it's like these things also rise up, not again, like you do. No, nothing wrong with doing that. It's just for myself, I need to reclaim those things, and then to change where it's like when you have a page, like to come to Power Creatives TV, there's a page where you have to put in your email. That's called a capture box.
Right.
And I hate that name. And so we rename everything. And then when your email goes into a list, it's called a bucket. And the other page that you then pay on and whatever, those are called squeeze pages. I'm just like, that's what I thought of. And I was like, in our company, we call the place where all the emails are, we call it the golden bowl of who you get to communicate with. We just sort of switch things around to make it living for us.
Well, and it totally will change the energy of it. I know on my when you put your name and email, it says submit, and then I write, what do I say? I think it's something like sign up but never submit.
I love that.
Because no, but it's exactly right. And going back to the solstice and not wanting to launch, it's so what happens when something becomes popularized, and this is the very thing, this is one of the reasons I wrote this book, is that when things become popularized, people are doing them without understanding the wisdom that's connected. They're not rooted to the wisdom.
Or honoring.
Or honoring. Thank you. Thank you. And so it becomes something people do because it looks spiritual.
Right.
But there's no ancestral tie, there's no rooting, there's no honoring, there's no real depth of, I don't mean understanding in an intellectual way, but soul resonance.
Right.
You know, there's not a commitment, a devotion to that way of being. It's just this is what I'll do because I heard about it and it sounded cool. And that to me feels, I'll be honest, I'm going to just say it. It feels like theft. It feels like unconscious theft.
Yeah, and people don't necessarily know they're doing it.
They don't know that they're doing it.
Why we wake people up.
Right.
Because we just fall into these traps, these marketing traps to get the word out. Like we both have books that came out around the same time, and we're talking about, do we need to have a whole plan and a whole team and all this stuff? Or can we just say, this is the labor of my love, and I have offered it, and those it needs to get to, it will get to. And how we have to unhook from what it's supposed to do, and how we subject our creations to that. That's a pretty new and strange chapter that we're in.
I love what you just got pearls, girl.
Well, it's because we're talking.
Subject your creation to.
Yes, and that's something, of course, that I struggle with as an artist. When I was younger, my first books were offered to be published by a major publisher. I didn't, and then never got another major offer again. So I often think back to that with regret. But we call it, you're not going to take the nipples off, because what the publisher said to me about my book, Color of Woman, my first coloring book and journal that I did when I was in my 20s.
Wow.
Still exactly the same book. It has women all throughout it, and they're big, juicy women. There's no clothing, but they're not necessarily naked in some way. It's an illustration. Right. They said, oh, gosh, they wanted all three of my journals, contracts, blah, 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 the offer, the dinners, all that stuff. And at the very end, they said, we need to take the nipples off.
Wow.
And what was interesting is that they already had stuff like cookbooks with sex. Like, they already had sex stuff. But for some reason, and I was like, I don't think I can do that. And so I was like 30, and I was like, okay, bye, big publishing deal.
Yeah.
You know, but that's what Jonathan, my husband, just referred to it yesterday. He's like, you can't take the nipples off.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Hello, integrity.
Right?
Yeah.
And so how often we're doing ends means conversations about, well, I'll do this for a little while and compromise, take the soul-sucking job or this relationship. I don't know if we can afford to do that anymore.
Right. That's the negotiation. We'll publish you.
Afford to do that. See? It's right in there, though.
Right. It is. Yeah, afford to do that.
Right? There's some dead language.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that is dead language. That's amazing that they said that. Good for you for standing in your own authority and your integrity. I mean, for leagues of us women.
Yeah, because that isn't easy, because we are told to get the work out.
Yes.
You know, but what I see you pointing towards is that the essential thing is to make this contact with your soul.
Yes.
And when you do that, the whole arena changes.
It's a game changer, which I know you know. It's a game changer for sure.
Gosh, I don't know if we're supposed to say that anymore either.
Oh, probably
game
not.
Changer.
Yeah, that's so masculine. Please forgive me.
There's so much.
It's a reality shifting and evolutionary growing. I'm so sorry.
It's pretty funny how much military and also sports language is so everywhere. Like, I love the word avant-garde. I've always thought of myself as avant-garde. I've studied the avant-garde movement and then only just discovered it's a military term.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the guard that goes out in front.
Oh,
right.
Oh,
so.
You could still have it. You can repurpose language.
There you
we
go.
We can repurpose language. Yeah, absolutely.
And so with the naming, there's work that you do specifically with people to have them sort of find, well, you can say it however you want, but my way of saying it is, instead of saying, I'm a doctor, I'm a coach, I'm a healer, I'm a teacher, you actually come up with a new way to speak about yourself.
Right.
I mean, we all struggle with this. Those of us who are Renaissance women, which is most of the women in my community, could have 10 different titles.
Right.
And they're all stupid when you put them all together and you're like, oh, look, who does she think she is? She's a poet, she's an artist, she's a dancer, she's a painter, she's a teacher, she's an entrepreneur. Like, oh, boring. So how do people get past those titles and into something that's more close to the soul?
Well, I don't want them to get completely past them because they're all true. And
Right.
and a lot of it is based on the fact that, you're supposed to be one thing. You go to school to be
Right.
one thing.
One thing.
Which is
Specialization.
crazy, right? You are these multiple things. You are the dancer, the painter, the writer, the planter, the farmer. And so you get to be all those things. And if you're challenged, and Lord knows I am. I mean, I feel like I'm the cobbler's wife with no shoes. I don't have the perfect title. I'm waiting for someone to name me. I mean, I have my native name, but I mean, name my work. But and if you're challenged with talking about what it is you do, then what I do is I work with people, and the process you can work with yourself in this book to really get at the core meat of who you are and what you bring together or what you expose, I guess is the best way to say it. So for example, I worked with an artist who's Japanese descent, and she does a lot of art around the concentration camps, wanting people to remember. And she really didn't sell her work at the rate it should be sold. And she had a very hard time articulating what she did. And so I named her and I gave her a language to use on her website and to talk to people so that she wasn't, kind of over talking it and la la la. So we named her the Bone Collector. Mm-hmm. And actually, she has two names. She doesn't like the Bone Collector, but I really like it. But I'm trying to remember what the other name was. I really liked Bone Collector. But the first name that she really liked. Sometimes I come up with 2 or 3 names, and I let them choose. So she chose the Narrator of Culture. Nice. And then I gave her language to talk about herself. And so that really helped propel her work out into the world because she was able to speak about it.
Right.
Right.
And it also speaks to that creativity that others have, because the descriptions oftentimes don't have a resonance. They're just descriptions.
Right.
But when you put it together, it becomes poetry.
Yes.
Becomes lyrical.
Right.
And that lyricism is part of your song and allows other people to see, hear, and feel you in a different way.
Yes. And it's a story. It's a visual story. So when you think of a narrator of culture, you think of you can see it.
Right.
And so when people can see it, they can agree that, oh, yes, that is your name, even if they don't even fully understand it.
Right.
Once you name something. And then the naming is when we name people and things, it's so that when we speak their name, we're speaking as a reminder to them, you are sacred. We're speaking back your sacredness into the world. And so that's why we name bodies of water, mountains, our children, our animals, trees. It's because we're naming them not to just identify them, but to identify them to be sacred, as sacred matter into this world.
Right. So that has a lot to do with relationships.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So relationship to what there is.
Yes, all that there is.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
I love that. And so if someone was going to do an exercise, if you have paper and pen, you should always bring those to the alchemical cafes because we usually get going on something. If you were going to invite someone to do that, what would we do?
So for purposes of ease, in this moment, I did this in the TED Talk, and it's not in the book. I would ask you to answer this question. I would ask you to take no more than a minute and to write out, I'm in the business, and if business doesn't work for you, you can change that, but this was initially for entrepreneurs. And I want you to fill it in with a couple of verbs and nouns. And if you've got to use nouns, I'll figure it out so that, you can verbalize it. So you write, I am in the business of, and you let it spill out. So for me, it was, I'm in the business of consciousness and spirituality. It's not a name, but at least it lets me talk about what is true for me. Or and I avoid words, and those are nouns, or maybe they're adjectives. I don't know. I don't know my English grammar very well. But I avoid the kind of vague words like I'm in the business of transition or I'm in the business of leadership, because those are so overused and generic, they don't say anything. So, I might also say I'm in the business of seeing within. I'm in the business of walking between two worlds. I'm in the business of seeing the soul of you. I'm in the business of naming. I'm in the business of love and creation. But if you can, I'm in the business of loving arts, awakening consciousness through intentional creativity.
So this is a restart. Mm-hmm. I'm in the business of the loving arts. Just popped out, but I was like, I would never say that, but that's amazing that that's what came. So the second one was I'm in the business of awakening consciousness through intentional creativity.
That's beautiful. And it's so clear and it's so true.
Yeah.
It is so true.
So then how would I create my name out of that?
Well, that's a good question. You'd have to do some more work here in the book.
Speaking of which,
this won't give you the name, but it will give you a place to start about looking within. But it's so funny you ask, what do you name yourself? You've got lots of names.
Well, first I just want to tell you to go to melaniedewberry.com.
Thank you.
And to get your copy of the book. Please just go purchase the book. You don't need to think about it. You don't need to read our bio. You don't need to read any reviews. Just go ahead and go and get it. And not only support this work, but get a really refreshing view that I feel like your voice brings, because I have a lot of amazing women in my circle, like a lot of amazing women. And for me, I'm actually hard to amaze.
Thank you.
And so
this I know is true. I know this is true.
And I am in love with everything. And so everything's awesome. And I can appreciate and honor and be grateful for everything. But for me to kind of be like, all right, that is not as common.
Thank you.
Because I grew up with the smartest women I've ever met in my life, and they forced me to be conscious. And so I like to be surrounded with peers who are also conscious, so we can catalyze each other. So when I was reading this and listening to your teachings, I was like, okay, this is fresh. This is ancient and fresh, and we need to do this work together. I think this would be great to do for women's circles and, of course, book groups.
Yes.
I think there's plenty of material in here that can be translated into workshop material for people to use the book for teaching. So there's a lot of, it's sort of like a wisdom text. I think that it's a teaching text where you can take it and learn to incorporate a lot of this into things you're already teaching, which I know is part of what you want to have available. So
I do. Thank you.
Yeah. And about my name, my first name was Den Mother by my family when I was a little child.
Wow.
Because I was a caretaker. Uh-huh. And later it kind of became Clan Mother until I realized that I did not want to be in that role.
Yeah.
Good and that's a big thing, because it's an honorable title to be given by your community. And I had to say, I'm not going to do it. In fact, I'm moving more and more away from a mothering energy and more into my rebel.
Yeah.
And away from caretaking and loving fiercely, being a stand and not doing it from that other place, but allowing Earth to be the support and me to be a stand for it, but not to be always cleaning up all the messes, which I've done for most of my adult life. So there's transitional titles, I think, too. So in my community, it's Laughing Cloud. Mm-hmm. So, which was just given to me from the ether. So I was signing my name one day, and it just came out.
That's beautiful.
And then I forgot about it for years.
What does it mean to you?
I don't even know. It's about holding the space for joy. Mm-hmm. Now it means a lot of other things than it meant in the beginning. But it's this being a big woman too. You know, there's a sense, and my last name is McLeod, so there's that piece too. But I think like the sense of like this buoyancy, and I think of my grandmother, my big old Russian grandma, who when she would laugh, like her breasts and her belly, like everything would just be like ha ha, you know, like everything would just shake, you know, and you just was so soft and you just so embracing. So there's something about, you know, moving also into the physical part. Like in my mind, I ride a motorcycle with lace and leather and tattoos, and I'm a complete badass who could give a flying F about anything. But that isn't my body type. And so there's also this reconciliation of like my body type is a projection. People say, oh, you look like the great mother, you know, and I'm like, oh, great. You know, so working with inside, I'm this leather wearing badass on a motorcycle, and from an external place, I look like the nurturing mother. And trying to reconcile that with my identity.
Yeah.
Right? The physical part, the projection with the physical part is a big part of how you get named.
Yes, it
is.
is.
And how you get treated.
It's absolutely, which is why it's so important for you to know your own name. And I just want to underline, highlight, sparkle, glitter, what you just said a few minutes ago. And I really hope that the women and men listening heard that when you said I was named the din mother and the
clan mother
as the caregiver, and that you don't want to do that anymore. And I think so many of us are named, and nothing, you know, again, nothing wrong with it. But does it fit? Just because you've done it, just because you've been good at it, doesn't mean it's yours. And so I think sometimes
big one.
We are compromising and negotiating ourselves based on how others see us, and then we feel compelled, like it's a duty, and we don't want to disappoint. And
that's what they can count on you for.
And that's what they can count on you for.
So what are you going to be unreliable?
Right.
You know, what we can count on you to be this, and then you're going to be like, I'm not going to be that anymore, and then they're going to think that's out of integrity.
Right. Yes. But they will come around. And so it's really important as you start to look at who you are, and answer your question, who am I really? And you were saying, I am not this.
Yeah.
And the world didn't implode, it didn't fall apart, right?
No, it has taken a few years though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I called it shedding my archetype. And it's taken quite a few years to communicate with my community and my family about it.
Right.
So the renaming, and I did want to change from the laughing cloud. Because I didn't want it to be connected with the old den mothering and clan mothering thing. And then I came around and realized I can keep it. I just need to redefine it. And to be in peer groups and where you can actually say, you know, I'm taking on the next persona or skin. I'm playing in this new domain, and things are going to be different. And I did do that. I did actually communicate to my mom and to everyone, and just say, yeah, I'm not going to be having Thanksgiving dinner. Jonathan and I are actually going to go to a luxury hotel instead and go swimming on Thanksgiving. Like, I'm not doing it, you know, and if it arises, we can gather, but that's not going to be my focus.
Yeah.
You know, and we, you know, Louisa Tish yesterday was saying, I'm just saying no to all these things now, and I just say, what am I put on this earth to do? And when I say no to people, I just say, I'm not put on this earth to do that.
Yes.
That focusing on, that happens, you know, after 40, when you're like, wow, like, I better pick the thing I'm going to do and do it.
I love that you said no to Thanksgiving. Do you see? I mean, I keep wanting
to highlight that, right?
Well, right. And that's why I wanted to highlight it, and say it again, because there are so many of us that would not give ourselves permission. People always come to my house for Thanksgiving.
Well, I guess I'll have to come to your house now.
You know, no, not me. I'm just saying.
All right.
No, nobody wants me to cook. But you know, that's the thing. And I've been doing it for 20 years. This is where people come. I can't say
that's
no
who
to
I
that.
am. How often we'll say, that's who I am.
That's who I am.
And that's who I am for others. But who are you for you?
Right.
Right. That's what's in here.
That's evolution. That's maturity. That is trusting. That's alignment. That's beautiful.
That's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
I love it. I love you, and I love this work, and I love there's so many powerful questions in here.
Thank you.
So
she loved me.
Yes, I do. Yay. So good. And I feel like this is immediately applicable. Like, as soon as you get into a little bit, you can start doing it.
Yes.
And so I'd love to close with a little bit of talk about the original story. I know we've both done some work around that. Your work around original story, was it drawn from an Indigenous teaching that you received, or you kind of, I know there's lots of original story teachings, but
There
what
is.
for you was what came up?
It wasn't from like any of my elders sitting me down and saying, this is what original story and medicine is. No, it was, I'm guessing it was a combination of watching my elders, participating in ceremonies, and also my own deep intuition. Like, what do as I wrote these chapters, I had to look within myself. What is really my original story, and how do I know that?
Right.
So I think it's born from everything, just like everything we do when we're artists. It's like it's a creation from the many different parts of us that we've and the worlds that we've dipped into. But I'm putting on my glasses so I can see. But so is it okay to read?
Yeah, please read to us.
Story time. Your original story begins as a thread. I love that. Each day, every decision, new learning, and lessons reveal an ancient and divine poem written in harmony with your soul's desire. So with space, you'll declutter so that you can hear what this story is. And it's revealed in relationships, not necessarily what you've always been to people because people have an expectation, but maybe also what you haven't been that they don't know about you in those relationships. So that's all I'm going to read. I'm going to say your original story is certain. It is known by you somewhere inside, but you do have to unclutter it to be able to read it. It is the essence of you. It's the thing that you cannot be. That is your original story. It's the thing in the world you could not be. You could not do. It would extinguish your breath. It is your very breath in the world. And it may be the thing that you're not doing, that you're hiding, or you're doing it on Saturdays away from work and you're not telling people, but it is your very breath.
So you can't not do it.
You cannot not be it or do it.
And do you think that we're living it and don't know how to have language for it?
That can be.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if you're managing it. If you're suppressing it or managing or trying to make it acceptable and you're clay working it and you're not really living it, you probably don't know that that's your original story, or maybe you do know, but a lot of people forget because they're so busy changing the forms of it to be adaptable for whatever environment they are in. But the truth of the matter is, it is who you be, and you cannot not be that in the world. Can I say that? Not be that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got it. I think we got that. Okay. And so when somebody discovers more about their true name, when they've done some of the work to discover and uncover, or even just the recognition that the archetype that they're operating in is not the one that they want to now be, even if they've been being that.
Right.
Then do you think we have more access to original story?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So part of what I cannot not be in the world, what I absolutely must be and do is I have to be truthful. And it doesn't mean that I go in there, I just tell the truth because the truth is so important. It doesn't matter how I say it because, it doesn't matter as long as it's true.
Right.
It's not that.
Right.
But I also can't negotiate the truth so that it's so comfortable that you miss the truth.
Right.
Right? Or flower it up. I cannot not be that in the world. So one of the things I did recently is I called up a very dear friend of mine who I adore. And I just said, you're not a good friend. I love you, but you're not a good friend. And I've been holding this back for 18 years and I need something more. And what I want to know is it in your capacity to give? And if not, let's talk about what we're going to do instead. Because it's not that I don't want to be friends with her, but I don't want to pretend
that it's something. Yeah.
Yeah. And that, the thing about your story and your medicine and your name, all of that, is that it will invite you to step into courageous and loving, self-loving ways in which you've not known yourself.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
In which you've not known yourself, but now may get to hang out with yourself.
Yes.
Because we don't really know who we are.
Right.
And the minute we know, then it starts changing.
Yes, that's true.
I wanted to ask you one more question. I know we're right about time, but I feel like we could keep this conversation going for days. in the Indigenous part, when you think of that, I mean, you're Indigenous from your African heritage with some Native American, but when you think of Indigenous, what does that mean for you at this point in the journey? Because I know we talk about, because we deal a lot with cultural appropriation, how to be appropriate, what percentage are we, what right do we have to talk about what, a lot of us being removed from our motherland, but we all come from the original dark mother,
Right.
the black mother. Like,
Yes.
if you haven't done your lineage to check that out,
Yeah.
go ahead and
Thank
do
you.
that now. So we all come from her.
Yes. Thank you for that. So let's just take culture out of it for a minute
Okay.
and say, one of the things I learned about following this red road, that's what we call Native American spirituality, and being a part of a tribe, and I know this is what you do in your tribe, is that when you're Indigenous, you belong to something greater than you. You belong to people, which is different from clubs of sameness. Like, oh, okay, we belong to each other because we're both Republicans, or we're both women, or we both have cancer, or we both, not that. That's a club. Those are clubs. Clubs are fine, but they're based on sameness. Where the Indigenous factor is highly based on diverse uniqueness. Diverse uniqueness. So it's honoring your absolute unique, honest, true nature and grounding yourself in it and belonging to that which is around you. And hopefully there are people in that community. And so part of like being belonging to an Indigenous community and belonging to your Indigenous nature means that I belong to you. I'm here for you. Now, we're all here for each other in different ways. You know, I'm not the caregiver like you were talking about, but I am here in this other way. And so what that means is that as threads, we are woven together, and we are only stronger because we are together.
Beautiful. Thank you for
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you for that. Well, what a pleasure having
Thank you,
you
honey.
here for Power Creatives TV and hearing your stories and catalyzing
Thank
each
you.
other and all of you. And I want to thank all of you so much for joining us for this amazing series of Herstory, looking at threads of story, how we ended up creating what we created. Is there anything you would like to share with our viewers in closing?
You know, I want you to know from the depths of my soul, from the bottom of my heart to the top of my hair to the soles of my feet, that you are wanted here, unchanged, that you are wanted by me. Be blessed.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, each of you.